Mr. KSG. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon.
It's wonderful meeting you virtually. And I think I got the right opportunity to be the host for you for this session and to know more about you because I think it's been like almost 3-4 months where I have interacted with you. But the kind of knowledge you carry, I think this is the right platform what we are using today to spread the word out.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you for
yeah, with
hosting
this,
me. Please go ahead with your pointed set of questions on the subject and also on the personal side as well, should you want to go in that area. Go ahead.
sure, done. Thank you. So, before we start and get into the business and what I want to know today is about your journey. Where and how did you start your professional journey and how did you end up where you are today? What is something which is fascinating you about digital infrastructure started when?
Yeah, thank you, Diksha, and bit about my history and past. Most often or not, I hesitate to share what kind of experience you have because most of you end up being a liability to oneself rather than adding any value in the conversation because of the long history. And what also matters is what you did in the last 2 years is what matters, and it's in the age we are in. What matters is actually not even 2 years in the last quarter. What you did is what matters. But nevertheless, if you jog a bit further from 90s to 2000 to 2010 to 2024, multiple periods. So if you track my trajectory, started my career as a networking specialist and engineer in an Indian SI company, and did that for almost 10 years. First 10 years of my career was working for a Indian mid-sized organization, doing building data centers, doing networking, building systems, primarily in the Asia Pac market, to be very frank, centering around India and India related geographies, little bit of Asia outside of India as well. Then I moved on into pure from a pure SI kind of a proposition into managed services proposition, because we took the company from being an India centric company to a global SI, global managed services kind of a entity. And so that's where my deep capabilities around engagement with international clients started, taking the offerings primarily around infrastructure services and the areas of managed services for global client in US and Europe started. That was the period between 2020, 2000 to 2010. During this period, I have seen at least 3 S curves. The traditional one being the standard PC-based networking to client-server networking, to bit of a private cloud early days though in 2000 to 2010. And so that's one set of history, or if you see the career progression. Later on, I moved to IBM from the Indian SI company and working for the India and larger parts of surrounding India, primarily working with IBM GTS. But so suddenly you go from a small size company to a 100 billion size company. So I was the cross competency executive in IBM. So you help build large data centers, large scale application systems, primarily centered around ERP. So I've done that. And throughout these two stints, I was always a technology person, so a CTO kind of a profile. In fact, I was the CTO for the Indian company which I spoke, and moved into IBM as a chief architect for IBM GTS business and a cross competency executive. Then if you move further, 2014 to 2021, I was the CTO at Cognizant, and built the cloud and infrastructure services practice, grew that almost 2x to 2.5x, actually, to be precise, in terms of revenue. Built global practices around hyperscale systems providers such as AWS, Google, and Azure, and ServiceNow practice. And then moved into a second role within Cognizant as a global automation and the technology head, which is sort of cross horizontal and cross vertical in nature. And right now, I am an advisor now for Netcon, trying to do what I have learned in the past and trying to move the needle within Netcon into being a global player, global SI player, and also a global managed services player in offering managed services around cloud services, data services, and application related stuff. So all the experiences which you have learned, I'm trying to put it together to from a Netcon perspective and trying to move Netcon from the current 2.0 to a Netcon 3.0 kind of an initiative to take the company beyond what it is doing today. And so during this journey of 3 decades plus, many IS curves, right from which I was explaining to you, PC-based networking to client server, to private cloud, to a public cloud, and then right now in the age of data and AI and IoT and related aspects of things. So through the career, I've always been a technology and a technology professional, a CTO kind of a profile, and so that's been a bit of history and its relevance within the Netcon ecosystem. I hope it resonates with you.
I think your journey had started somewhere where we are just stepping into, and seeing your journey and going through all the phases where India was developing, and to India still has done a lot in the infrastructure, and with the current leadership how it is going on, it's quite impressive. And I think you being a part of it, I think we all are already proud of it. And I believe with you coming on board and you being an advisor to us, a long way to go for us.
Thank you.
So, I the next question of mine would be around data center innovations. We all are talking so much about the data centers today. Everyone is talking about the data center. So, what is the recent innovation in that domain that caught your eye?
Yeah, so it's a very complex topic because a lot has happened in the past, and a lot has happened in the last 2 years, and a lot is going to happen in the next few years, 3 to 5 year time frame. It's a very complex kind of mesh. If you see data center, if I were to simplify it across a 3 by 3 matrix, I'll making it simpler for you so that you go in that. So if you put in one pillar, everything around air, power, cooling in a data center, even within an international context and in an Indian context, one pillar, if I place it as air, power, cooling, is changed and changed dramatically. I'll tell you the reasons of the change in a while. The second pillar is everything around. We normally ignore large parts of the nuts and bolts of a cloud and a hyperscale or an edge data center, but everything around rack, everything around cables, everything around interconnect. If I put that as a second bucket, and that is changing and changing dramatically. I'll explain that in a moment. The third pillar is the traditional network compute storage systems within the rack. That's undergoing a phenomenal amount of change. Propelling this change is the fundamental premise in which the whole change is happening is the change relating to data, right? So the whole changes which I explained to you across these three pillars and pivots, air, cooling, and power as pivot one, rack, cables, and interconnect as pivot two, and everything around network, storage, and compute systems as pivot three, is built on the premise that we have started consuming more and more of data. And so that's the whole. It will be sounding cliche to say that hey, data is the new oil, data is growing, there is 5G, there is OTT, there is mobile internet, you're watching something on a completely democratized OTT system right at your edge devices. Hitherto was available only to select set of people, and so on and so forth. So in a typical consumer related technology, even within an enterprise, the amount of data which we started consuming, whether it is a manufacturing segment, whether it is in the airport segment, which Netcon has very strong capabilities on, and also on the healthcare side, where we do a lot of work from Netcon side, there's a huge amount of data which is getting consumed. These changes of ubiquity of the data and is driving many of these pivots, right? And that is the fundamental improvise in which a data center and its evolutions have happened, right? It has always followed a path of a data center. Take, for example, India. We are almost in the close of having a data center capacity of 1 gigawatt, and it took almost 20 years for us to reach 1 gigawatt. Just like if you track the trajectory of IT services company, people always say it took Infosys 20 years to become 1 billion, but they doubled it within the next 10 years kind of stuff, right? So same stuff is going to happen on the data center side. And the fundamental to that change is the way the data is consumed, the way data is consumed within an enterprise, within a consumer, within the telecom segment. That is driving this change, and we will uncover some of these elements as we move along.
Great. I think that is something, whatever, like we had, you had given the inputs. I think those are the major points which is getting the all the attractions toward the data center. Personally, even when I have joined Netcon, data center was something very new to me, and until date it fascinates me. When we talk about the data center, you talk about every minute detail. I feel that yes, this is something which is big, and where you can really add value being an infrastructure, because everywhere the moment cloud journey had started, all these are getting replaced. So that's how it is happening right now. And even now the second term within the data center which is of more hype is hyperscale data center. So can if you can talk a bit about it.
Yeah, within the hyperscale journey and the data center, if you talk only on the hyperscale side, something which is people have different definitions of what is a hyperscale and all that. Before we get in deeper into some of the hyperscale aspects, the largeness of the data and the compute power needed and the kind of workloads which are coming with AI and generative AI is pushing us heavily into consuming some of these services rather than building some of these services, right? And hyperscale data centers, late 2000, later part of 2010, when AWS started its the peak growth between 2010 to 2024. I think we have seen tremendous amount of hyperscale growth, and even within an Indian context, you have seen both all three big players, Google, AWS, and Azure, setting up large hyperscale data centers within India, a separate region, and so on and so forth. Yeah, even today, if you actually see, close to around 60% of the data center space is located only in 2 or 3 cities within in an Indian context, right?
Yeah,
And same is true with the on the global side, and where hyperscale provides large scale flexibility and large compute, large storage, large scale network interconnect systems, building large power and cooling systems, and so on and so forth, right? So the hyperscale data center growth is here to stay. And if you see post COVID, during Corona time, I think the growth has been driven by hyperscalers, but that's on the one side. But also on the non-hyperscalers, people have started building. If you see the data center market, the primary market comes from the colo side of the business for the private players, the non-hyperscale providers, and that is also seeing a phenomenal amount of growth, even from an Indian context or an international context. So you have to see growth in the context of both hyperscaler and non-hyperscaler. So the growth is happening across board, between a private player, a hosting provider, an edge data center provider, and a hyperscale provider, as a holistic view, rather than slicing it as one cut of it. But needless to say, hyperscale growth are really growing at a rapid pace, and depending upon which region and which geography you're talking across the globe. Yeah.
correct. And I think all the I think Indian government and all the state government also are looking forward to it. They are investing huge amount of money in the hyperscale growth. There are MSIs who are purely into the MSIs business, and now every MSI is coming up with a different entity itself which is dealing only in the data center. So that means hyperscale and the data center is something which is very huge for all of us, and we like there's a big future and a way long way to go around. So I believe technology is something like technology is only area where there is a always debate about what is the hype technology and what is uh, useful, I would say. So what is your take on that?
Uh, in the sense that I'll take a bit about the some of the market drivers from the for the hyperscale, and then go expand into the technology aspects of it, right? So to take some of the market drivers, some of them are applicable not only for India but across the globe. But these are all the common narratives which are happening. So there is a surge in the compute load and the application using generative AI and AI related stuff, right? This driving higher powered systems, higher powered storage systems, higher powered interconnectivity and network connectivity needs, higher order cooling needs, and so on and so forth, right? So that's on the technology side, which is pushing primarily because of the need that the data and the surge in the load and the data has grown exponentially, right? That's on the one side. The second side, that's the technology aspect of things, which is primarily pivoted around to a need, a business need. On the second side, there is also government and related stuff which you spoke about. The passage of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the accelerated rollout of 5G, which we are doing in India. The Indian there is a large telecom players entering into JV kind of stuff and providing Indian data centers. So there is a fiber optic network augmentation which is happening across the villages of India. So there is a BharatNet initiatives which is going to connect all village panchayats with optical fiber by 2025. That's going to seamlessly open doors for smaller data centers in smaller towns. The digital banking system, the national digital health initiatives, those are driving some of these, resulting in something which is we ourselves have a national data center policy. There are policy incentives which are given. There are data center economic zones, DCZs, to foster an ecosystem of data center that will attract investments and industry growth. The incentives for clearances and revised building guidelines have been formed. So there is a cross industry government dialogue which is happening through something called DCIC. So that we are also indigenously developing some of these in primarily around power and strengthening power and power related stuff, right? So there is so much which is happening across the data center and hyperscale cloud providers and data center providers across the globe. So due to technology change, due to business change, due to policy change, right? And post the average data center size itself has grown to 30 to 35%, which goes back to your previous question as well on the growth of hyperscale data centers, and so which are greater than 20 megawatt or 30 megawatt from an Indian context, right? So that's driving this change. So there is a consumerization related change. There is an enterprise related change. There is a policy driven change which is happening across this industry, leading to a larger growth across all the players within the ecosystem, whether you are a consumer or a provider or a service provider like Netcon, doing all the heavy lifting around the data centers.
Great. What do you believe that this technology is at the matured phase? This is something innovation is, and this is at the cut bleeding edge. So, according to you, what is that?
No, see, there is nothing called ultimate bleeding edge. What is bleeding edge today might be 5 years down the line. We will say that hey, this is legacy, right? So it's always a point in time, and things keep moving and keep changing, right? Across data center performance and efficiency. I started the conversation to say that the contribution of data center is typically we used to say that hey, a 42U rack is good enough in a typical data center. Today people are questioning why can't I grow vertical, and if you actually look at data center size, it's always the width of the rack is always 2 by 2. If you know why we followed it, it followed that the tiles which we used to put in our flooring was 2 by 2. So they were aligning the rack size to a 2 by 2. Now they are questioning that. The cable which we use on a fiber, copper became fiber. Now we are using interconnects which are fiber, and the fibers are all 250 microns. So now they are questioning the sheet and the size of the fiber to be lesser. Can I use the same splicing? Can I remove the size, reduce the size, but by keeping maybe 30% lesser? Can I pack more cable within the same area, kind of stuff, right? And can I pack more power within the PDUs which are there in the rack? So and how these new age systems and the generative AI workload, as you know, Diksha, produces lots and lots of heat, right? And how do I cool these systems? Do I cool it locally? Do I cool it through central mechanisms? So that's getting changed. So if you actually see the value chain, every single piece of the value chain is getting disrupted, right? Normally we all associate everything around the NVIDIA and the storage and network and all that. But we tend to miss out on these smaller elements. And but with, mind you, these are the small elements which make or break the availability and the resiliency of a data center. If you actually see the availability and resiliency metrics, more than close to around 50 to 55% of the failures happen because of power and heat and related aspects within the data center. Rarely you will see some software failure and all that, right? So the IT failure is actually one third, two thirds of the failure rests outside of the IT. So you need to focus on those areas as well, and that's where the technology changes are happening. Needless to say, within networking, within storage, within computing, so much has happened, right? And so much is happening, and we kept on packing. When I started my career, it used to be K became M became G in terms of gigabits, and today it is 400. Tomorrow it will be T, and it will be 1.1, 1.6 terabits packing on the network density, and it will go on to Z maybe 5 years from now. So that's the change which is happening on the networking side. And same is true with storage, right? We did I and the kind of demand which is there on the storage, and I think we are going to see very soon the supply. The demand is going to outstrip supply. We will need to store more and more and more of data, right? So end of the day, the technology is changing rapidly. And I go back to the original stuff. Why did it happen? It because of data, right? Everything around it happens because of these three things. And every technology which is data at rest, data in motion, and data when it is being consumed is getting changed. And data at rest is data at storage, data in motion is networking, and data in while it is getting analyzed is computing. So all these elements are undergoing change from the core IT, and the associated elements are also changing, whether it is PDUs or rack size, the vertical nature, the horizontal nature, the cable, the number of cables you will pack, the strands in which the cable goes, the sheath of the cable, the power, the cooling, every single stuff is getting changed. We're leading to something where can I do more with less? Can I pack more with less?
I think your point is valid. Like the focus, what is there on the data center part is more on the IT part of it. But there are other ways also where there is more consumption, and the concern has to be there. Even I was having discussion with one of the data center expert, and they were talking about the same thing. You have so much of infra in your data centers, but there are other reasons also which contributes equally to any losses or any negative in a data center, be it your heat flow, be it your cooling technology, how you are taking it up. So all these contributes equally. What IT contributes alone, all these factors put together contributes in a similar manner. So I think your
Absolutely.
point is well taken on that. So it is predicted right now that the data center density will go up. So, which technology do you think will be enabling here?
Yeah. So you will see more and more getting packed. The height of the rack may go up. The average. So there are different metrics, Diksha, right? And if you take metric as sustainability as a metric, right? You have the CUE ratio, you'll have the water, you'll have the carbon, and you'll have the PUE ratio of the data center in the ratio of the power used by the data center and its consumed power delivered to the computing equipment. So every single metric, PUE to WE to CUE metrics is undergoing, will undergo change in the sense that you will keep questioning the way it is built, because the way it is built is not going to be the way it's going to be remain next 3-4 years down the line. We are also seeing it's not one size fit all, right? The things are hybrid in nature. Not everything will go inside the cloud. As we see in NetCon, we did large scale projects on the private cloud rollout using converged infrastructure solution. So there are people still building data and keeping it local. There's a huge amount of data which gets generated, which stays local within an enterprise. So there is going to be technology which are going to be innovated on the storage side, on those areas. Also on the computing side, you will see the new announcements from NVIDIA packing so much of power within the same chip, which is happening. Innovation keeps happening on that. And on the networking side, it is completely changed from the way it was 3 years back. You have seen more and more things which are getting packed on the networking side. So there is going to be growth across board with the new set of applications which are coming in on the media telecom. On the healthcare side, huge push around applications which have implications on the imaging and the education sector or BFSI, our own UPI and its related growth on the data. So you are going to keep seeing that more and more switches ports are going to get packed. So with a smaller footprint kind of stuff, right? Workloads and storage will become blob. You'll go into a DNA storage. You can't afford to keep producing the same metal on hard disk and keep storing on flash. So you'll have different methods of tearing the storage itself. So these are some of the drivers which is going to make the change happen. But broadly speaking, there's not going to be one size fit all. There is going to be something which is going to be very, very distinctive for an enterprise. Is a private data center cloud which is going to build at a in-premise kind of a model. And it's also on the public consumption side, there may be something which is utility based stuff, right, which is particular for an application, right, and something which is government related, something which is for finance related, right, because you can't say that this is one data center, be take it all kind of stuff. So you will see those kind of differentiations which will start coming in over a period of time, which is going to drive the way the new data center design and architecture will be built on. So there's nothing hard and fast here. Things are moving at a rapid pace, depending upon how industry presents itself in terms of growth and opportunity in this area.
Correct. So I think your point has been very specific. Not so specific, I would say, but yes, it is enabling everyone. From I think, and the major focus can be towards the storage part of it. So, going to the next section of ours is the AI, the hot topic of today's every technology expert. Everyone wants to talk about it. So, as of now, how vital do you believe the role of AI is when it comes to data center?
See, one is AI for data center, right? And
Yes.
AI workload from data center, right? So let's take it at two ways of doing it, because AI will be used to manage and operate and run a sustainable data center operation. So you build a data center and you want to do 3 or 4 refresh over a period of 15-year horizon in a typical business cycle. Right, and so you need to run the AI, you need to run the data center operations, and you use AI and AI ops like what NetCon provides as a managed services for some of our private cloud operators and public cloud operators, and also large enterprises where we provide those services. So we'll end up using AI in terms of, when I say AI, I mean AI led ops. You use these data, you capture data from capture data from where? Capture data from all the systems which we spoke, all the allied IT and non-IT system which we spoke. We will use DSIM to manage, and then there will be AI component on DSIM, the AI component on IT operations to manage power efficiently, to space efficiently, to manage the asset efficiently, to manage the thermal, heating, everything efficiently. We'll capture data, analyze it, and run it better. Same is true with the IT systems as well. And then the AI workloads, which is the pointed question which you had, is driving some of these data center needs in terms of the growth of the workloads around AI, the AI related applications which are inferencing led, which are high compute led. And then when you start getting into generative AI, you're going to get a lot more workloads which are going to be creative in nature, where you're going to do text prompting and it's going to generate video workloads and so on and so forth. It's going to affect large scale design elements in manufacturing or pharma or any of these specific industry specific workloads, driving some of these changes within a data center. And if you see this, while people always tend to see the computing element of it, right? And the market is heavily one vendor centric today, right? When I say one vendor, it is tilted towards too much towards NVIDIA. But you'll see that Intel new announcement which has come in. So you will see some specific announcements from AMD. Even the hyperscalers are building their own GPUs, hopefully over a period of time. So you will see the market getting slightly more democratized in nature over a period of time, driving these kind of workloads. What is also changing is the way networking traffic is consumed, right? Now, what was always an egress traffic from outside to inside and large scale computing, many of these generative AI and AI workloads, the traffic patterns have changed dramatically. So you need to undergo some networking changes within a data center as well, and that is driving the change. You need to have efficient storage mechanisms in order to get into these kind of workloads, which is predominantly relying on data. So you're going to query a storage system, you're going to analyze from a storage system, you're going to store in a storage system. So the tiering needs, the networking needs, the traffic pattern does not follow the traditional leaf network kind of an architecture. So there is a change which is happening there as well. And we saw that when we built some of the private clouds using NVIDIA and for large scale hyper-converged infrastructure, which Netcon did in the last few projects as well, in a smaller way. So that is driving some of these, but do you put these are projects which are still in POC, proof of production. It's not gone into a large scale mainstream production system yet. They are still in the periphery, but still driving large scale workloads within an enterprise workload needs. So that's going to drive some of the data center architecture, change in architecture, change in the networking within the data center, change in the storage part of the data center, the change in the way computing is done within the data center, and how power is structured and how cooling is structured and so on and so forth. So that change is a continuous process, just like an application DevOps process. You will have a data center DevOps process here, where you're going to continuously redesign and you're going to continuously change the way you are run the data center.
I think your point is well noted on that. AI with data center, I think it will be a big boom. And so far, whatever the improvements and the milestones are being achieved, there's a still we are still looking forward to it, the new trends. So AI is a new trend for everyone, and generative AI, when combined with the data center, creates a lot of buzz. So, what is your input on that?
Yeah, so just to extrapolate some of the stuff which I spoke from my previous answer, Gen AI is still early stage, but it is going to be one of the significant workload as we move along in next 2 to 3 years time frame, as when the adoption start becoming mainstream. It is still not mainstream, so much to say from an Indian context. Internationally, there are so many experiments which are happening from a global context, and so that's going to put a lot more pressure, and which is why you saw the Yota announcement with Nvidia, one of the largest India made on the AI side, getting into large scale Nvidia deployments on a data center on the consumption side. But I believe while public cloud providers and systems will continue to be there, there will be industry specific Gen AI workloads. So you don't get into all these, yeah, you're not always get into large scale, hyperscaled Gen AI led data centers. So there's going to be micro Gen AI workloads which are going to be there. So it's not that you're going to consume all the public LLMs. There's going to be industry specific private LLMs as well. Maybe open or not open, time will say. But those LLMs will start coming in. People may want to run it from their own premise. It may be expensive, but it will give them a lot more comfort, lot more privacy, lot more control within the data set which they operate out of, rather than pushing everything on a public domain kind of stuff, right? So you're going to see evolution on these workloads, just like how evolution happened from 2010 to 2024 on some of these IT workloads. You are going to see workload evolution on the Gen AI side as well. But one thing is clear, right? People, it's not going to be one size fit all. There's going to be hybridness in the approach. So there's people are going to be hybrid, deploy these in a hybrid fashion. Something local, something in public. I will consume. I'll figure out how my regulation and privacy just gets acted on top of my thinking and my workload, because that's going to change the way it's all these are going to be consumed, and we'll see how this pan out in due course.
Great. Uh, then I'll extend this question further. So, how does AI help with data center operations?
Yeah, so that's the point which I was talking about. See, for example, we at Netcon, we manage and do a lot of heavy lifting on the data center side. We run, so that's one of the differentiation factor I liked about Netcon is everybody would want to do business which is at a high margin business, but you end up not doing the heavy lifting work, right? We do both. So where, for example, the AI with based operations in a data center, everything starts with sensorization within a data center, right? So you start sensorizing some of these elements. When I say sensorization, you start adding sensors for thermal, for heat, for power, and everything around the utilities which are there. And you start measuring some of these system using what's called DSIM, right? And we have you are aware, we have a DSIM practice where which is core utilities within the data center. And we also have something where there you're going to use lot and lot of AI and inference, right? When I say AI led ops, you're going to understand the data. You're going to build on a supervisory engine on top of a supervisory learning mechanism, which is sort of a supervisory engine on top of this data. The Pulse, which is our Netcon managed services offering, uses some of these elements in building some of these capabilities in running an efficient DSIM based operations within a data center. That's on the utility side. That on the IT side, when come inside the rack, which is outside the rack and inside the rack. When out inside the rack, you start monitoring the VMs. We are not monitoring and managing and operating the data center systems, the storage, the compute systems, the applications which are running on that. And you have AI which is used. You start using observability tools, monitoring and management tools on the networking side and also on the system side, and start managing these using AI-led operations, capturing data and sort of understanding how past data, and then start providing recommendations for future operations. Thereby, you move into AI-led operations, which is machine-led operations than human-led operations, and that's our goal, and where everybody is moving towards. And so that's going to be a heavy push around how AI ops get used in DSIM and in managing the IT and IT related systems within a data.
Great. So, another question related to AI only. How does AI enable operations like liquid cooling or cloud native infrastructure impact cost, efficiency, and sustainability?
Good question. So it's an extension of the previous question, Diksha. And everything starts around, just like we all in an age, when I started the conversation, we said, hey, everything gets pushed around in the current scheme of things because of the drive of the data and the growth of the data. The same concept of applying applies here. You use data to capture and to capture some of these elements, whether it is the cooling system. When you start measuring these cooling systems, how it works, and how it should act, and how was it acting on a full workload, what kind of cooling system, what kind of power you need to maintain, the throughput of the systems within the utilities and related areas. You start gathering the data and you start measuring and monitoring these systems, and then you start understanding and you start analyzing these and start tuning these based on your past data patterns which you have gathered from these elements, right? What are those elements? It can be air, it can be power, it can be cooling. You start measuring power and power related stuff, cooling and cooling related stuff, and so when you start gathering the data, you start analyzing the data, you move into a space of providing recommendations and solutions, and more from running your operations to both a predictive based operations rather than a reactive based operations. So the predictability starts coming in when you start gathering these data. And same is true with the IT systems, and that's where generative AI starts playing a larger role. AI in general and generative AI also, with a lot more capabilities which are thrown in when you add chat and other related support systems within the AI domain.
I think AI is contributing a lot then to the data center. Like so far, it was only about the technology and replacing the tech people, but I think AI is helpful a lot in the data center because data center is all about the data, and with AI you are able to make the data more efficient, utilize it in a much more better way, and with that predictive analysis you can take the necessary next steps for the data centers. That's what I feel, and the take on from
Yeah,
whatever points you have told so far.
valid, very valid.
Yeah. So, moving from this section to the development. So, how do you feel Indian progress right now on the data center landscape is different from the global landscape? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so we are not different from the consumption of technology standpoint. However, we may differ from the scale and size and the number of data centers which are available, right? And if you compare with, let's say, Virginia, which is one of the largest data center hotspots in the world, and then you compare it with China, or you compare it with Japan, we may not have that kind of power, but we need an efficiency and scale, but we are getting there. As I said, that it took 20 years for us to come to a gigawatt of power consumption today, right? And you'll see some cities which are tier 1 cities like Mumbai, Navi Mumbai region, Delhi NCR, Chennai, and then Pune, then Hyderabad. You'll see some of these regions which are growing, right? So I foresee, and this itself, this 1 gigawatt is supposed to be doubled to 2 gigawatt in next 3-4 years time frame. And if you do a large scale pan out, the 1 gigawatt may become 10 gigawatt in a 10 years time frame. I'm just making a prediction, right? And so we will become 10x in the next 10 years in terms of power consumption. Just imagine the kind of water, the kind of power, the kind of land space, the kind of heavy lifting on the networking side and the storage and the computing side we have to do. Large scale investments, of course, will come from hyperscalers and also from private players. So we will start attracting, and there are policy measures which we spoke about, which are getting put in place, and it's already in place. And we will start following sooner or later some of the global standards in some of these utilities. So we'll benchmark ourselves with global standards. At the moment, we may be 13 or 14 in terms of the number of data center and the power consumption. But I think we will only get farther and better as the time progress in terms of capacity, in terms of reach. You'll see more and more edge data centers coming in play, right? And you'll see some of the stuff which is having less than 10K servers kind of stuff, consumption. So you'll have customized, custom built kind of stuff which is happening, because there's a lot of stuff which is happening on the edge side as well, right? You yourself start watching a 4K movie, the kind of data which you generate from your own mobile system. Just imagine the kind of workload which you're putting back on some of these systems, right? So we have democratized some of these business to consumer applications, and you add an India scale to it, right? And start watching some of these stuff. You are going to see a phenomenal amount of growth in terms of data center and capacity. So it's going to grow and grow multiple. So we are just entering a phase of a rapid growth, to cut a long story short.
Yeah, so I think that entrance, whatever has been made, is appreciative enough. Like we can appreciate the kind of development what is going on and the thought process behind it, and the support which is coming in from every side. I think that is more of like we should like tap our shoulders and should congratulate each other. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
think the next section would be about the skills. So about what foundation data center infrastructure capabilities are most enterprises still lacking today, whether it is network agility, sustainability, or resiliency.
Yeah, see, in terms of skills, so this is a classical outsourced activity, right? So there is no data center specialist which an enterprise need to hold. Take for example a large healthcare hospital or an airport, or a private government entity. There you don't keep a data center builder or a data center operator or data center heavy lifting networking kind of specialist in all that. So it's a classically an outsourced activity, so much to say for industry. Unlike I build my own SAP team, I build my own data analytics team, an enterprise may say. So this is an activity which is more in the realm of an outsourced nature by and large. I'll keep it as 95-5. 95% is always an outsourced activity. And hence from a provider perspective, the skill needs are primarily around the data center builder as a profession. When I say data center build, it is everything around the data center heavy lifting part of it, non-IT, and everything around within IT as well, right? So you need to build capabilities around hyperconverged system. You need to build capabilities around storage, the high-end networking side of things, in setting up cyber security within the data center, because that's one thing which we have not spoken. Because everything around other non-IT systems, from fire to air to cooling to other aspects of it. So the skills are across many aspects, but by and large, and you also need to end up operating these data center, right? So you need data center operators for IT and non-IT systems. So that's going to be a large amount of skill pool. So you will have specialist capabilities around hyperscale, right? When you want to do interconnect with some of the hyperscale systems, you need to be certified or capable on certain technologies, whether it is VMware, whether it is on AWS or Azure or GCP, as the case may be. And then you'll start understanding certifications and capabilities around the operating systems, the networking side, the security side of things. So it's a multidisciplinary certification need across different roles and capabilities, which a provider like, for example, Netcon, we ourselves are investing on some of these skills and capabilities, delivered in-house or it's sourced outside from a training capabilities. Lots and lots of materials available on the public domain. But that's one area which will be of constant push for many of these service providers to skill up and keep bootstrapping up into newer areas and newer way of doing things.
Great. So, with increasing focus on sustainability, how will data center will be more greener in 2024?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question. So sustainability, if I were to put one thing where I need to very many of the data center providers, business leaders will focus on, it will be to improve the CUE, carbon emissions, the power PUE and VUE, WE related metrics which are on the data center side. How do you consume less water? How do you consume less power? How do you consume good power? And are you benchmarked yourselves with some of these global standards? Are you
Yes.
measuring against your ESG goals? For example, many of these data center providers, sustainability becomes a key driver for many of them. So ESG goals become an important driver in it is the main driver, in fact. And how do you start measuring some of these GHG emissions, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3? Some of them are easily measurable, particularly scope 1 and scope 2, which is in your control. How do you go start measuring scope 3 emissions? And where do you get water? And how do you measure the heat of the water which is coming in? On how do you get the coolness of the water which is coming out? So these are some of the stuff which will always be there. What kind of emissions which you provide, you are supposed to be benchmarked against. And so those standards which will continue to drive. So sustainability will be the driver for many of the data center build. It's not going to be inside the rack. So it's going to be a larger theme where everybody will start focusing on some of these performance and metrics around some of these areas. So everything around that ESG metric will be done through some set of design optimization, adoption of technologies, adoption of materials and practices to minimize emissions, and hence, so it's very important to drive a sustainable data center ecosystem, right? So the green power is always been provisioning will be a paramount importance for data center, and it is all the more what was optional is becoming mandatory, right? And you should have 35 to 40% of the green power available. So you need to expand that green power usage. So you will see increased usage of green power from 3 to 5 times from the current usage. So you will going to see provisioning for water segregation facility, wet or dry or e-waste. So you're going to have solar PV catering to some of these percentage of the building consumption needs, at least for non-IT workload, right? And why should a lighting system be run out of that? You can run it through a solar PV. So you are going to see efficient cooling systems, liquid cooling systems. So you're going to see different kind of fresh air units as per different kinds of ASHRAE standards. So people are going to have rainwater harvesting. So these are fundamentals which are coming. So you need to adhere to Green Building Council data center norms. You need to adhere to international norms of EN 5600, if not to a fullest potential. There are ISO norms which are 22237, different set of standards for producing measuring these standards, benchmarking these standards, bettering these standards over a period of time. How will you do residual emission with offsets? So there are large scale intelligent and automated systems to drive efficiencies across these elements, which will start coming in over a period of.
Great. So with this, we will move to our last session, that is rapid fire. So where I'll shoot some questions at you, and
I
where
will
I
attempt.
expect you to answer in a word or maybe in two sentences.
Yeah,
So I hope we are ready for that.
I
So
am
my
ready.
question is about, on a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate yourself at social media?
Yeah, social media in the parlance of Insta, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter as 5 out of 10.
5 out of?
10, I said.
Oh, okay. LinkedIn, anyhow, is not part of social media, but I think the kind of
Okay, then
thing
it is 3 out of 10.
happens now, it is also part of social media.
Yeah,
Go to the next one. A piece of tech that changed the way you live.
a piece of tech that changed the way you live is everything around mobile and mobile technology. I'm a great believer in democratization. And it's not the question of you and me sitting in an office and driving some of these. I think mobile and UPI has driven a phenomenal amount of democratization and understanding the implication of democratization, right? And when you drive around in the towns and villages of India, and when you see the UPI being used, you somehow you'll always see he, me, my country, and my pride kind of stuff, right? So that yeah, that is, to me, is a clear vindication of what technology and democratization of technology can do to upbring a larger part of the ecosystem and a society which can benefit at large. Yeah,
I think yes, your point on UPI is well taken. Now, when you step in into the market, you don't have to worry. You
yeah,
will feel that maybe you must not be working on the
true,
Google Pay, and everyone would be noting it. No, ma'am, we are on Google Pay, and you feel proud about it. People are
absolutely,
adopting. So I think it's more about the ease of technology. It is more
yeah,
about how simple and straight things can be. It is adaptive. There's
absolutely,
no going back to that. So I
absolutely.
think people has adopted it well, and how it has transformed our life. We are living it today. So my next question is, if you were not a digital infrastructure expert, what else you would be?
Yeah, two areas, Diksha. So I would have certainly, I am a movie buff, and I would have become in some ecosystem within the movie industry. You name the language, I always watch all kinds of movies across all Indian languages. Of course, now we always watched English and now Korean and other stuff. So something around movie or something around cricket, because that's my another passion. So certainly been will be would have dappled in some of those in those two industries, which is heavily tilted around media or sports.
Good, interesting. But this is something which is really interesting for me coming from you. That if not digital infra, you would have been into movie. And with
Yeah.
that, I this is a question out of everywhere. Who is your favorite movie star?
No, many, multiple, and of course, coming from South, you will always associate with Rajini. So, and always been a fan of Talaiva.
Yeah. So, most challenging professional project as of until date, you
No, there are
still
many.
remember.
Yeah, many. See, normally people associate Diksha scale with and complexity with the project. Okay, to me, it's not the technology complexity. It is. There are many projects while at Cognizant, while at IBM, I was involved. Me and my team. Eventually, I was accountable for some of these. But one thing I always put is challenging was being a, infrastructure professional, moved into application. Then I moved into in the global technology head role. I ended up building with my team a global platform, which is a software platform, completely new. Here is set up people where you're building a software. And in a services company, building a software system is a very, very tricky thing, right? You are in business, you know. So you will all, whenever you build an IP, you all take it and then give it free to the customer, and then say that, hey, it is part of my service. But you need to show value. So I built. That was one of the challenging project, is in building a platform, and primarily an AI ops platform, which is what we are trying to replicate in Netcon as well, in a way, trying to build, but using commercial systems and open source systems. But here we built it ground up, and so that was a challenging project, and it was deployed for across close to around 70 plus global clients. So that was one of the challenging projects in building a software platform to run global operations on the application and the infrastructure side. Yeah.
Great. So, last question of the session: would you rather go for kayaking or for skydiving?
Neither. So I would rather go. I would rather go to an IPL match if I had the time, and or to a nice movie, instead of doing these two. So that's been my, that's me. Yeah.
I think these options, while putting myself, I was wondering whether I'll be in a position to answer this. So I'll better prefer being in my comfortable position and doing some art rather than going and facing the death from just 1 centimeter away from me. Skydiving is
Absolutely.
a complete no-no. Rafting
Absolutely.
is still okay. Kayaking is no. So,
Absolutely.
so with this, I think thank you so much for your time. The entire session has been very much insightful, and I hope you might have enjoyed it. And thank you for all the lights you had put across all the topics, be it AI, be it on the data centers, and how AI is helping the data centers to grow at a pace. So I think I had taken my valuable insights for the day, and I believe with this, people will be taking their all inputs. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hey,
Thank
thank you, Diksha. It was wonderful, and your journey in NetCon, it's as wonderful as your journey in NetCon. And I really enjoyed, and thank you and NetCon for putting this together. I was initially hesitant, saying, "Hey, a podcast, what do you end up doing?" And here is somebody who is very, very knowledgeable, works very, very closely with many of NetCon's customer, and showing me pointed questions, very, very directional questions. And thank you. I enjoyed every moment of the conversation.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.